A pennon was one of the principal three varieties of flags carried during the Middle Ages. Penning shells and streamers or pendants are minor varieties of this style of flag. The pennon is a flag resembling the guidon in shape, but only half the size. It does not contain any coat of arms, but only crests, mottos and heraldic and ornamental devices. Etymology. Pennon comes from the Latin penna, meaning a wing, or a feather. Description. The pennon was sometimes pointed, but more generally forked or swallow-tailed at the end. In the 11th century, the pennon was generally square, one end being decorated with the addition of pointed tongues or streamers, somewhat similar to the oriflamme. During the reign of Henry III, the pennon acquired the distinctive swallowtail, or the single-pointed shape. Another version of the single-pointed pennon was introduced in the 13th century. In shape this was a scalene triangle, obtained by cutting diagonally the vertically oblong banner. Usage. The pennon was a purely personal ensign. It was essentially the flag of the knight bachelor, as apart from the knight banneret, carried by him on his lance, displaying his personal armorial bearings, and set out so that they stood in correct position when he couched his lance for charging. A manuscript of the 16th century in the British Museum, which gives detailed particulars as to the size, shape and bearings of the standards, banners, pennons and pennon shells, says, a pennon must be 2.5 yards long, made round at the end, and contain the arms of the owner, and warned that, from a standard or streamer a man may flee but not from his banner or pennon bearing his arms. A pennon shell was a diminutive pennon carried by the esquires. Pennons were also used for any special ceremonial occasion, and more particularly at state funerals. For instance, there were 12 dose pencils among the items that figured at the funeral of the Duke of Norfolk in 1554, and in the description of the Lord Mayor's procession in 1555. It reads, 2 goodly pennies decked with flags and streamers, and a 1,000 pencils, among the items that ran the total cost of the funeral of Oliver Cromwell up to an enormous sum of money. We find mention of 30 dozen of pennon shells a foot long and costing 20 shillings a dozen, and 20 dozen of the same kind of flags at 12 shillings a dozen. Variant types. The streamer, so called in Tudor days but now better known as the pennant or pendant, was a long, tapering flag, which it was directed, shall stand in the top of a ship or in the forecastle, and therein be put no arms, but the man's cognizance or device, and may be of length 20, 30, 40 or 60 yards, and is slit as well as a guidon or standard. Among the fittings of the ship that took Beauchamp, Earl of Warwick, to France in the reign of Henry VII was a great streamer for the ship 40 yards in length, and 8 yards in breadth. Besides the white ensign, ships commissioned in the Royal Navy fly a long streamer from the maintop gallant masthead. This, which is called a pennant, is in fact the sign of command, and it is first hoisted when a captain commissions his ship. The pennant, which was really the old pennant shell, was of 3 colors for the whole of its length, and towards the end left separate in 2 or 3 tails, and so continued until the end of the Napoleonic Wars. Now, however, the pennant is a long white streamer with the St. George's Cross in the inner portion close to the mast. Pennants have been carried by men of war from the earlier times, prior to 1653 at the yard arm, but since that date at the maintop gallant masthead. There are other navies that also fly pennant in a similar manner. The commissioning pennant in ships may end in a point, but they can also be forked, in which case it is also called a banderole. Pennants are also associated with American sports teams, such as Major League Baseball and college sports teams. In Australian rules football, a pennant is awarded to the winner of major competitions. For many years, this was the only prize given. As a result, a league championship is often referred to as a pennant, as in, the Giants win the pennant, and in Australian football, a premiership can also be referred to as a flag, the Dutch pennon. In the Netherlands, an orange pennon is always used on the King's Day. It is flown alongside the standard Dutch flag. The Dutch provinces each have a pennon as well.